The marriage of Katherine Pierce and Alexander Sterling was a transaction, a carefully orchestrated merger between two of New York's most powerful dynasties. While they once shared moments of genuine happiness, their union began to crumble the moment Emily Davis, Alexander's secretary, a woman bearing an uncanny resemblance to his deceased first love, entered their lives. Their commercial marriage was a web of deceit. It was a story of cold, calculated counterattacks, public humiliations within the city's elite circles, and a soul-crushing slap in a hospital hallway. All these elements combined to create a drama of breathtaking intensity, overflowing with tension and emotion. A crisp notification sound from the phone on the coffee table shattered the silence of the vast living room. Katherine lazily reached for the device. It was a text from Mr. Johnson, the caretaker she'd hired to look after her private estate in the Hamptons. The property was a wedding gift from her parents, a tranquil sanctuary with a sweeping view of the Atlantic, and a place where she had invested much of her heart. She didn't have Mr. Johnson stay there full-time, only instructing him to check on it once a week. Today wasn't the weekend, so his sudden message surprised her. The text contained only a few photos and a single concise sentence. Miss Pierce, I stopped by for an inspection today and found strangers on the property. There is also damage to the garden. Katherine's long, slender finger swiped through the images, and a slow-burning rage began to ignite within her. A pristine white marble sculpture, one she had commissioned from a renowned Italian artist at great expense, now had a jagged piece broken off. The priceless camellia bushes she had cultivated by hand were uprooted, lying forlornly on the manicured lawn. Worse still, her crystal-clear swimming pool had been turned into the venue for a raucous party. As if on cue, her best friend Chloe sent a screenshot. It was an Instagram post from Emily Davis, her husband's secretary. A meticulously arranged 9-photo grid showed Emily in a revealing bikini beaming by the pool, surrounded by a crowd of unfamiliar faces. Most provocatively, the location was tagged *the Sterling Estate, Hamptons*. The caption was a declaration of war. Thank you, Mr. Sterling, for the gift of this magnificent villa. I'll be sure to work even harder. Katherine's heart clenched. It was ludicrous. The estate was in her name, a prenuptial asset. What right did Alexander Sterling have to give it to someone else? She took a deep, steadying breath, trying to suppress the inferno raging in her chest. She loathed it when others touched her things, be it objects or people. Once something was sullied, she wouldn't hesitate to discard it. Katherine didn't reply to Chloe, nor did she message the caretaker. She simply forwarded all the images to Alexander. Her fingers flew across the screen, the message as short and sharp as a blade. Alexander. What is the meaning of this? Why are there other people in my villa? Less than a minute later, her phone rang with his incoming call. She glanced at the screen and decisively rejected it. She was in no mood for his excuses. Immediately after, a voice message arrived. Alexander's voice was as deep and warm as ever, but she could detect an undercurrent of impatience. The faint sound of waves in the background confirmed he wasn't in New York. Katherine, I'm on a business trip in Boston, dealing with something urgent. Emily has been working hard, so I just let her borrow the estate to relax for a few days. Don't be so petty. It's not like we're short on places to live. Petty. Katherine's lips twisted into a cold smile, letting his secretary stay in his wife's private home, allowing her to run wild, and then turning around to call her petty. She slowly typed out her response, her tone devoid of emotion, like a commander issuing an order, not a wife making a request. I don't care where you are or what you're doing. I want her out of there in 3 hours. The villa is to be restored to its original condition, not a single blade of grass out of place. The message was sent, and 2 blue checkmarks appeared instantly. He had read it. 5 minutes passed, 10, half an hour. Her phone remained silent. His silence was more damning than any refusal. It was his answer. He had chosen to ignore her warning to side with his precious secretary. Very well, Katherine whispered, her eyes turning glacial. She had given him a chance and he had squandered it. In that case, don't blame me for being ruthless. Her finger scrolled through her contacts until it landed on a name saved as Mr. Miller Esquire. The call connected instantly. Mr. Miller, I need your assistance. I have an estate in the Hamptons. I want to sell it. Immediately. The voice on the other end was surprised but maintained its professionalism. Miss Pierce, what price are you looking for? I can contact the high-end real estate agencies right away. Katherine gazed out the window as the sunset painted the New York skyline in hues of blood orange. Her voice was light, yet it carried an immense weight. No need for that trouble. Find any buyer and put it up for a public online auction. The starting bid, she paused, a mocking smile gracing her lips. $1. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Miss Pierce, are you certain? I'm certain, she replied, her voice firm. And there's one condition for the buyer. Upon completion of the sale, they must be on site within the hour to take possession and clear out everything and everyone that doesn't belong to them. She wanted Alexander to pay for his contempt. She wanted him to understand that once Katherine Pierce decided she no longer wanted something, no matter how valuable, it was nothing more than trash in her eyes. Mr. Miller's efficiency was impeccable. Less than an hour after she hung up, he called back to inform her the transaction was complete. An anonymous tycoon had won the auction for a symbolic sum and was already en route to the estate with a private security team. Katherine calmly set down her cup of chamomile tea, the anger in her heart finally subsiding. She didn't care who the buyer was or how little the sale had fetched. Her goal was singular: to reclaim her dignity and teach Alexander Sterling a lesson. Just as she put down her phone, the screen lit up again. It was a call from Alexander Sterling. The man who couldn't be bothered to reply to her text was now calling her in a panic. Katherine smirked and answered, her voice deliberately casual. Is something wrong, Alex? The line erupted with his furious roar, the calm, sophisticated demeanor he usually wore completely gone. Katherine Pierce, what the hell have you done? Why was Emily thrown out by a group of strange security guards? Do you have any idea how terrified she was? His voice was laced with concern and pity for his secretary, yet there was not a single word of inquiry about his wife's feelings. Katherine found it laughable. Oh, is that so? Her voice remained unnervingly calm. That estate was mine. I had every right to sell it, which I just did. The new owner's only request was to clear out all unnecessary people and items within the hour. I suppose your secretary was on that list. The other end fell silent. The silence stretched for several seconds, long enough for Katherine to imagine Alexander's stunned, disbelieving expression. When he finally spoke, his tone had softened considerably, even carrying a hint of placation. Katherine, is this some kind of misunderstanding? There's nothing going on between me and Emily. She's just my secretary. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Don't you think you're overreacting? You're being overly sensitive. Katherine couldn't help but let out a cold, mocking laugh. Alexander, you say I'm sensitive, but it's you who doesn't know how to maintain boundaries. And now you blame me? She retorted sharply. A married man lets his female secretary stay in his wife's private home and allows her to flaunt it on social media. Did you ever once consider my feelings? Her words seemed to leave him speechless. He deftly changed the subject, his voice laced with impatience. All right, I was wrong. But Katherine, you have so many properties. It's a waste to leave them empty. I was just trying to make use of our resources. Nothing inappropriate happened between me and Emily. You don't have to be so petty. There it was again. Asterisk. Petty asterisk. He always used that word to dismiss her valid emotions. Catherine's lips curved but her eyes were like ice. Fine. If you say I'm petty and ungenerous, she said slowly, each word a dagger aimed at his pride, then I'm sure you won't mind. If your most cherished treasures suddenly turn into a pile of junk. Without waiting for his reply, she opened her phone's photo album, selected a few pictures the staff at their shared penthouse had just sent her, and hit send. The images showed the antique collection Alexander kept in his home office, the collection he prized above all else. Now, it was all shattered. The Ming Dynasty vase he boasted was one of a kind was now just a spray of blue and white shards across the floor. The exquisitely carved jade statue was cracked in two. The line went dead silent again. A chilling, deathly quiet. This time, Katherine could feel his seething rage through the phone in the heavy rhythm of his breathing. Katherine. Pierce, he ground out her name, each syllable dripping with venom. She knew he was at his breaking point, but she didn't care. Alexander, I assume you've seen the photos? Her voice was terrifyingly calm. This is the price you pay for testing my limits. If you ever dare to cross that line again, I assure you, what you lose won't just be a few inanimate objects. With that, she ended the call, giving him no chance to respond. Their marriage had begun as a business alliance. The Sterling family, new money from the tech world, was desperate to break into New York's old money elite and needed the backing of the Pierce family's established real estate empire. Under their family's arrangement, she and Alexander had become husband and wife. When they first met, he had been gentle and attentive. She had thought perhaps living with a man like this wouldn't be so bad. After their wedding, they had even shared a period of sweetness, developing genuine affection, but Katherine had always remained clear-headed, knowing she had to put herself first. She could accept love fading with time, but she would never tolerate betrayal in any form, especially from a third party. Alexander Sterling, you have crossed my ultimate red line. The game has only just begun. After I hung up, the opulent living room returned to a suffocating silence. I placed the phone on the glass coffee table, the soft clink sounding like a gavel in the quiet space. A cold, satisfying sensation spread through me. This wasn't just revenge, it was me re-establishing a boundary Alexander Sterling had brazenly trampled. I didn't have to wait long. About an hour later, the screech of tires echoed from the driveway, a sound filled with fury. The heavy mahogany front door was thrown open with brutal force, slamming against the wall with a deafening thud. Alexander stormed in, bringing with him the cold night air and an undisguised rage. His face was stripped of its usual handsome, calm demeanor, replaced by a dark, weary scowl from his hurried trip back from Boston. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, and his bloodshot eyes stared at me as if he wanted to tear me apart. He strode toward me and threw his car keys onto the table. The sharp clatter of metal against glass was a chilling sound, completely shattering the fragile piece. Katherine Pierce, his voice was hoarse, choked with anger. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you know what those pieces meant to me? I remained seated on the sofa, slowly sipping my still warm chamomile tea. I didn't even bother to look at him, my gaze fixed on the delicate petals unfurling in the clear liquid. My indifference was clearly fuel to his fire. I know, I replied softly, finally lifting my head to meet his blazing gaze. I broke them precisely because I knew they meant so much to you. I knew those antiques better than anyone. They weren't just about money, they were his pride, the props he used to embellish his status and sophistication. In recent years, it seemed his affection for those lifeless objects far surpassed any attention he paid to me. He could spend hours polishing an old vase but lacked the patience to listen to me finish a sentence. You did this over something so trivial? Alexander stepped forward, his large hand clamping down on my arm, forcing me to look at him. What did Emily do wrong? She's just a vulnerable girl who needs protection. Are you trying to drive her to her death? My eyes coldly flickered down to the hand gripping my arm, a wave of disgust washed over me. I wrenched my arm free. Trivial? My voice rose, sharp as a razor's edge. You call betrayal trivial? You call letting another woman occupy my house and publicly provoke me trivial? I shot up from the sofa to face him. Though he stood a full head taller, my presence at that moment was no less imposing. And she's vulnerable? Alexander, are you blind or just pretending to be? Would a vulnerable girl brazenly post photos on social media to taunt her boss's wife? Would a vulnerable girl make you drop critical business to rush back from Boston just to confront your wife? Each of my questions was a needle piercing his flimsy defenses. Alexander's face turned from white to red and he was left speechless, unable to defend Emily's actions. He stammered, his eyes avoiding mine. I didn't mean it like that, I just... You just what? I pressed, giving him no room to escape. You just saw that she bears a slight resemblance to Lillian Reed, so you indulged her time and time again, isn't that right? The moment the name Lillian Reed left my lips, Alexander's entire body flinched. He looked at me with a mixture of shock and panic. I scoffed. It seemed I had hit the mark. Alexander, let me tell you something. I stared directly into his eyes, my voice firm, cold, and clear. Our marriage may not have started purely from love, but it was built on respect and fundamental rules. You broke those rules. Today was just the first warning. I paused, letting my words sink in. Don't let there be a second time, because then what you lose won't be just money or a few precious toys. Finished, I didn't spare another glance at his conflicted face. I turned, my back straight, and walked step by step up the staircase. I could hear his heavy breathing and the sound of his fists clenching behind me, but I didn't care. The first squall had just begun. If he still didn't learn his lesson, I would show him what a real hurricane looked like. A few days passed in a tense, dreadful silence. A sort of unspoken ceasefire seemed to have formed between Alexander and me. He didn't bring up the estate or the shattered antiques, and I had no desire to rehash the unpleasantness. He started coming home later, sometimes not until the dead of night, reeking of alcohol. We shared a bed but were like strangers, neither of us speaking a word. The atmosphere in the massive penthouse became suffocating. I knew our argument hadn't solved anything. It had only deepened the chasm between us. Tonight, we were scheduled to attend the Apex Charity Gala, a major event for New York's high society. It was a performance we had to give, a public display of marital harmony for the sake of both the Pierce and Sterling family names. I stood before the mirror examining myself in a sapphire blue evening gown custom-made by a famous Parisian designer. The dress clung to my body, accentuating my curves, the luxurious silk shifting with my every move. I had been looking forward to wearing it tonight. Just as I was fastening my diamond earrings, my phone on the vanity buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. Asterisk. You're here already? Why didn't you call me? I'm in the main hall. Asterisk. I frowned, confused. I quickly typed a reply. Asterisk. I'm still at home getting ready. You must have seen someone else. Asterisk. The moment I sent the text, Chloe initiated a video call. She said nothing, simply panning her camera across the party. Amidst the glamorous crowd, I saw a familiar figure. Alexander. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, looking impeccably dapper. But the woman on his arm, holding it intimately, was not me. It was Emily Davis. And the thing that made the blood freeze in my veins was the gown she was wearing. It was the exact same one-of-a-kind sapphire blue dress I was currently trying on. Every cut, every single embellished detail, it was unmistakable. An icy shock shot down my spine, followed by disbelief and finally pure, unadulterated fury. This was no longer a violation of my property, this was a public humiliation, a slap in the face in front of the entire New York elite. He hadn't just given his secretary a place to stay, he was giving her my identity, my clothes, my place by his side at a major event. As if to add fuel to the fire, another notification popped up. My assistant had sent me a screenshot Emily had just posted on her personal page. In the photo, she stood in the opulent ballroom smiling sweetly, one shoulder leaning intimately against Alexander. The angle was clever, revealing only a part of his arm and tuxedo, enough for anyone observant to recognize him but not overt. The caption made my blood boil. Asterisk. First time attending the Apex charity gala. Thank you, Mr. Sterling, for opening my eyes. I finally know what real high society is like. Asterisk. I suddenly remembered something. Alexander hated having his picture taken, especially for social media. Even I, his legal wife, had to practically beg for a photo on our anniversary, and he would still refuse with a frown. Yet now, he had tacitly allowed Emily to take a picture and post it for the world to see. This blatant favoritism, this ultimate insult, proved one thing. My previous punishment had been far too lenient. I stared at my reflection. The magnificent gown now felt like a mockery. The event I was supposed to attend was happening without me. My husband was there with another woman who was wearing my clothes. This humiliation was absolute. I took a deep breath, trying to quell the trembling in my chest. My face became a mask of stone, but my eyes were as sharp as shards of ice. I calmly removed the earrings, unclasped the necklace, and reached for my phone. My fingers flew across the screen. A new plan, one far more ruthless and cold, was already forming in my mind. Asterisk. Alexander Sterling. Emily Davis. Tonight's performance, I will make you both regret ever turning me into a joke. Asterisk. I didn't waste a second. My fingers flew across the screen, forwarding the picture of Emily on Alexander's arm in my dress straight to his number. The accompanying text was a single, cold, concise sentence and indictment. Asterisk. Explain why my dress is on her body. Asterisk. As I expected, the message was instantly marked as read, but once again, he chose silence. This terrifying silence was his answer. It showed that on his scale, the fragile ego of his secretary weighed more than placating the anger of his wife. This blatant challenge had pushed me far beyond my limits. If he had no respect for me, then he couldn't blame me for leaving him no way out. My eyes scanned the spacious bedroom, finally landing on a hidden corner of the walk-in closet. There stood a meticulously locked cabinet made of rare wood. It was the only place in our home I never touched. Inside was Alexander's private world, something he treasured more than his own life. But today that rule had to be broken. I walked over and used the spare key to open the cabinet. Inside there were no secret documents or valuables, just a small, exquisitely carved box made of sandalwood. Its surface was polished to a sheen, clearly cherished and frequently handled. This was his weakness. I took the wooden box and walked over to the fireplace, where a fire crackled merrily. The dancing orange flames cast flickering shadows on my ice-cold face. I placed the box on a small table right at the edge of the hearth, in a precarious position. A slight nudge, and it would fall directly into the inferno. I raised my phone and captured the moment, the precious wooden box and the ravenous flames, a composition brimming with menace. The picture was sent without a single word. This time his reaction was unbelievably fast. Less than 3 seconds later, my phone was ringing off the hook. It was Alexander. I let it ring for a few more moments, savoring his panic, before slowly answering. Katherine Pierce. His voice on the other end was no longer just angry, it was laced with genuine panic and fear. Put that down right now. What are you doing? I let out a soft, humorless laugh. What am I doing, Alexander? You should know better than anyone. My hand gently lifted the lid of the box. Inside were a few carefully preserved items, several faded old photographs, a simple silver bracelet, and a jade pendant carved in the shape of a leaf. The photo showed a girl with a smile as bright as the morning sun, her eyes clear and pure. Lillian Reed, Alexander's first love, who had passed away from a sudden illness. The Sterling family had once mentioned her name at a family dinner. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. I finally understood the reason for all of Alexander's recent erratic behavior. Emily Davis's face, upon closer inspection, was a 7 or 8/10 match for Lillian Reed's. So, she was just a substitute, a pitiful shadow of the dead. Katherine, don't touch those things. Alexander's voice was practically begging, his usual arrogance completely gone. I'm begging you, I'll do anything you want. Is that so? I smirked, my voice reaching a new level of coldness. Alexander, you know very well that I've always hated it when people touch my things. That feeling, I'm sure you're getting a taste of it right now. I paused, letting my threat gnaw at his sanity. Now, tell Emily to take off that dress. Immediately, there's a powder room in the gala hall, tell her to go in there and change. I don't want to see what belongs to me on her body for 1 second longer. The line went silent. I knew he was hesitating, torn between his secretary's dignity and the memory of his deceased lover. What's it going to be? I picked up the wooden box and gave it a gentle shake. The items inside rattled softly, each sound like a sledgehammer blow to Alexander's heart. You have two choices. Either she changes out of that dress before the auction officially begins, or you deal with the consequences. I gave him no more time to think. With that, I hung up. The decision was now in his hands. I sat by the fireplace, quietly watching the wooden box on the table, waiting to see if his obsession with a dead woman was strong enough to make him sacrifice his own pride. I sat motionless in the room, a profound silence enveloping me. The wooden box remained on the table, a ticking time bomb. The seconds ticked by, slow and tense. I wasn't sure what Alexander would choose. Just then, my phone began to vibrate incessantly. It wasn't a call from Alexander, but a flood of frantic texts from Chloe. My best friend was apparently live, reporting the best drama of the night. Asterisk. Oh my God, Katherine, what did you just say to your husband? He just got off the phone, his face went white as a sheet, and he shot up and bolted out of here like he'd seen a ghost. Asterisk. A minute later, another text arrived. Asterisk. He's grabbing Emily's arm, his face is pure thunder. That girl looks completely bewildered, no idea what's happening. The whole ballroom is staring at them. So embarrassing. I read the messages. A cold, satisfied smile spreading across my lips. It seemed the memory of his white moonlight still held more weight than the dignity of her stand-in. Chloe continued to bombard my phone. Asterisk. They just went into the lounge area. What is going on, Katherine, you're a genius. Asterisk. I didn't reply, simply waiting for the outcome. About 10 minutes later, Chloe sent a long message filled with shocked emojis. Asterisk. Oh my God, they're back, but, Emily, what is she wearing? I can't believe it, it's a janitor's uniform. Asterisk. This outcome was even better than I had hoped. Chloe quickly sent a voice message, her voice buzzing with excitement. Katherine, you are missing out. Alexander came back to his seat, his face as black as thunder, and Emily was trailing behind him in this baggy gray custodian's uniform. It couldn't be more hideous. Her expensive makeup is all smeared from crying, her hair's a mess, her eyes are all puffy, she looks pathetic. I could picture it perfectly. One moment, a woman draped in a magnificent couture gown, carrying herself like a queen. The next, she's cowering in the uniform of a janitor, the laughingstock of the entire upper crust. The rules at this gala are super strict. Once you're in the hall, you can't leave until it's over. She has to sit there looking like that for the rest of the night. Oh, I'm dying of secondhand embarrassment for her, Chloe said with glee. Everyone around them is whispering and pointing, looking at her with a mix of pity and contempt. This is truly top-tier drama. I smiled and calmly typed a reply. Asterisk. Take a few pictures for me. The clearer the better. Asterisk. On it, my queen. A few moments later, several high-quality photos arrived. In them, Alexander sat ramrod straight, his face expressionless but a tightly clenched jaw betrayed his suppressed fury. Beside him, Emily had her head bowed, her hands clutching the fabric of the janitor's uniform as if trying to shrink and disappear. The contrast between her and the elegantly dressed ladies and gentlemen around them was stark and jarring. After the auction concluded, Chloe texted again. Asterisk. When they left, your husband looked like he was about to have an aneurysm and Emily was crying so hard she could barely breathe. She really brought this on herself. Asterisk. She sent one final photo. My beautiful sapphire blue evening gown unceremoniously dumped in a public trash can outside the convention center. Asterisk. Got the shot. Asterisk. I looked at the photo, a smirk playing on my lips. I immediately posted it to my social media feed with a single, short, and succinct caption. Asterisk. Trash belongs in the trash can. Asterisk. No further explanation was needed. The intelligent people on my friends list would only need to glance at the photo to recognize the dress Emily had been flaunting just hours before. My meaning was perfectly, brutally clear. This counterattack was both ruthless and elegant. It not only humiliated Emily but also served as a silent warning to anyone else who might consider stepping into Katherine Pierce's life. I stared at the photo of the sapphire blue gown discarded unceremoniously in the trash. It had been a work of art, something I had dearly loved. But once it was sullied by someone else, it was no different from garbage in my eyes. Without a moment's hesitation, I posted the photo to my personal page. The accompanying caption was a single, concise yet devastating sentence. Asterisk. Trash belongs in the trash can. Asterisk. Instantly, my post exploded like a bombshell in the quiet, late-night world of New York's high society. My phone buzzed nonstop with notifications for likes and comments. Everyone on my friends list was sharp. They could easily connect the dots between Emily's boastful post from hours earlier, the rampant rumors from the gala, and this pointed post of mine to understand the entire story. No one commented directly, but the veiled remarks made their stance clear. Asterisk. Miss Pierce is so right. Class is permanent. Asterisk. If it doesn't belong to you, it will never fit, no matter how hard you try to wear it. Asterisk. I heard there was some great theater at the Apex Gala tonight. A shame I couldn't watch it live. Asterisk. These comments were more cutting to Emily than 1,000 direct insults. They were like a series of invisible slaps against her already tear-stained face. My phone rang again. It was Chloe, her voice a mix of excitement and concern. Katherine, you're brilliant. Do you know that the entire New York social circle is buzzing because of you? That Emily girl will probably never be able to show her face in public again. What a brutally elegant finishing move. After a triumphant laugh, Chloe's tone turned serious. But listen, you've made Alexander lose a lot of face in front of everyone. Will he give you a hard time when he gets home tonight? You need to be careful. I let out a soft laugh, my voice calm. Don't worry, even if you gave him 10 times the courage, he wouldn't dare do anything to me. My words were brave, but I knew a direct confrontation was inevitable. After hanging up, I didn't go to bed. I brewed a pot of jasmine tea and sat quietly on the sofa in the darkened living room with only a single warm lamp glowing beside me. I wanted to wait for him in the calmest, most controlled state of mind. Time ticked by slowly, the sound of the grandfather clock on the wall amplifying the silence. It wasn't until nearly 1 a.m. that I heard the familiar sound of his car pulling into the driveway. The engine died, followed by heavy, weary footsteps approaching the front door. The door opened and closed with a heavy finality. Alexander walked in, carrying the chill of the night and the faint scent of alcohol. He probably didn't expect me to be awake and waiting, so he instinctively reached for the light switch. The brilliant white light from the crystal chandelier suddenly flooded the room, making him squint, and then he saw me, sitting there, my face devoid of emotion, my eyes calmly fixed on him. He seemed a bit stunned, his expensive tuxedo was slightly rumpled, his tie loosened. The furious anger from the gala seemed to have been eroded by exhaustion and alcohol, leaving only a deep sense of frustration and weariness. He stood frozen at the doorway, staring at me. I stared back in silence. The air in the room grew thick and tense, like a drawn bowstring. Finally, he let out a long sigh and ran a hand through his hair. His voice was low and hoarse. You didn't have to take it this far. I looked directly into his tired eyes, a cold, icy smile touching my lips. This far, Alexander, you should consider yourself lucky that this is as far as I've gone. My words hung in the air like a whip, making the tension in the room even thicker. Alexander stood motionless, his face a mask of complex emotions. The weariness in his eyes was gradually replaced by a flicker of his inherent pride. He didn't apologize first, instead he went straight to the issue that mattered most to him. Where are my things? He asked in a raspy voice, his eyes locked on mine. That wooden box, where did you put it? Give it back to me. I almost laughed. Even at this point, the first thing he thought of wasn't my feelings, not our marriage teetering on the brink of collapse, but the box containing mementos of another woman. I remained seated, not answering his question, letting my silence be its own accusation. Alexander, after all this, is that box still the only thing you care about? I said slowly, my voice flat. Aren't you going to explain what happened tonight? Forced into a corner, he finally relented, but the apology that came out of his mouth was weak and calculated, like a mandatory task he had to complete. He walked closer and sat in the chair opposite me, trying to lower his voice. Katherine, he said my name, an intimate address that sounded utterly fake at this moment. I admit I was wrong tonight. I didn't consider your feelings, it's my fault. He paused, looking at me as if awaiting forgiveness. But I did what you asked. I lost face in front of everyone. Can we please not blow this up any further? Just give me back my things. I looked deep into his eyes, searching for a shred of sincerity, but found only calculation. You lost face because of your own inappropriate actions, not because of me, I said coldly, exposing his attempt to shift the blame. And I'm still waiting for a real explanation, not a half-hearted apology. I gave him no room to evade. Rewarding an employee? Alexander, do you think I'm a fool? There are 100 ways to reward an outstanding employee. Why did you choose the absolute worst one, the one most likely to cause a misunderstanding? Giving her a villa, letting her wear a custom couture gown, taking her to a prestigious gala, what do those things represent for an ordinary secretary? Surely you know, I pressed him, step by step. You wouldn't even take a single photo with me on our anniversary, yet you were willing to appear with her in public. Every time you indulged her, it was an implication, a tacit permission. That's why she grew bolder and bolder, even daring to provoke me. Seeing his silence, I decided to deliver the final, fatal blow. Your blind favoritism towards her. It's all because she looks a little like Lillian Reed, isn't it? Alexander's body went rigid, his face instantly turning pale. He looked at me, his eyes no longer filled with anger but with an undisguisable confusion and panic. He couldn't deny it. His silence was the clearest confession. Seeing his reaction, I knew I had won. I had touched the deepest secret in his heart. The anger within me began to subside, replaced by a profound sense of exhaustion and disappointment. I stood up, went into the bedroom and retrieved the wooden box, placing it on the coffee table between us. I didn't hand it to him directly. Alex, I used his nickname mockingly, echoing his earlier pretense. I can understand your obsession with someone who has passed. I never intended to disturb those beautiful memories. I looked him straight in the eye, my voice softening slightly but still laced with distance. But I also hope that you won't destroy the few good things we have left in the present. For the sake of a shadow from the past. I gently pushed the box towards him. What happened today, I want it to be the first and the last time. Alexander quickly snatched the box, clutching it to his chest as if it were a life-saving treasure. He looked up at me, his eyes shimmering with a complex emotion. He suddenly strode over and pulled me into a tight, desperate hug. Katherine, I'm sorry, he murmured, his voice hoarse as he buried his face in my hair. I truly know I was wrong. It won't happen again. I promise it will absolutely never happen again. He tightened his arms around my waist, but I just stood there, making no move to hug him back. His apology, his promise, could they be trusted, or was this just a temporary compromise born from the fear of losing his precious mementos? I closed my eyes, feeling nothing but an empty, boundless exhaustion. A week passed after the tumultuous gala night, and a strange, tense peace settled over our penthouse. Alexander seemed to be trying his best to play the part of a model husband. He came home on time, no longer reeking of alcohol, and would occasionally ask me about my day, but I knew it was all a clumsy performance, an act of penance born of fear. The invisible distance between us hadn't shrunk, it had widened into a chasm. I didn't expose his charade, merely observed him like a spectator watching a boring play. That morning I received a call from Mr. Thompson, a man my father had placed within the Sterling Corporation years ago, both to assist me and to monitor the Sterling family's every move. His voice on the phone was as steady and professional as ever. Miss Pierce, I'm calling to report on the situation at the company. Go on, I said. After the incident at the gala and your social media post, Secretary Davis has become the subject of endless gossip, Mr. Thompson reported. More importantly, is Mr. Sterling's attitude. Just as you predicted, he has created a very clear distance from her. All work is delegated through others, and any direct communication is brief and cold. His attitude has set the tone for the entire company. I smirked. The corporate world was a microcosm of society, never short of people who knew which way the wind was blowing. Those who had previously fawned over Emily, thinking she was on the verge of a meteoric rise, were now the very people treating her most cruelly. Mr. Thompson began to detail the torment Emily was enduring. Even without my intervention, this was the inevitable consequence of her actions. In the company cafeteria, the kitchen staff would accidentally season her food incorrectly one day, so salty it was inedible, the next so spicy she would choke and tear up after one bite. Her colleagues would just glance over before pretending not to see. When she waited for the elevator, those who once greeted her with smiles would now deliberately push ahead, letting the doors slam shut in her face. The climax occurred yesterday afternoon. Emily went into the restroom, and for some unknown reason, the main door was locked from the outside. She was trapped inside for the entire afternoon, screaming until her throat was raw, but no one came to help. It wasn't until the cleaning staff arrived at the end of the day that she was freed. Today, someone even secretly printed out photos of her in the janitor's uniform from the gala and plastered them all over the company bulletin board. Mr. Thompson continued. She saw them and furiously tore them down, but as soon as she turned her back, new ones were posted. She tried calling Mr. Sterling for help, but he rejected her call. Hearing this, I felt no satisfaction, only a chilling coldness in my heart. A man who could stand by and watch the woman he had so fiercely protected be publicly humiliated like this just to keep a promise to me didn't prove he loved me. It only proved he feared me. Miss Pierce, things seem to be getting a bit out of hand. Mr. Thompson's voice hesitated. Should I intervene a little? After all, she is just a young woman. I looked out the window at the proud skyscrapers of Manhattan gleaming in the Sunday. Mr. Thompson. You don't need to do anything, I said calmly. Don't overestimate my compassion and don't underestimate her ambition. She chose this path herself, whatever the cost, she must bear it alone. I had assumed that after all this Emily would be unable to bear it and would resign. Her disappearance would be the final curtain on this ridiculous farce. 3 days later Mr. Thompson reported that Emily had been absent from work for consecutive days without any explanation. I thought she had finally given up, but the truth proved I had underestimated her shamelessness and her cunning. In the days that followed, Alexander threw himself entirely into a crucial international partnership project. The partner was a major American tech conglomerate. If the deal succeeded, it would not only bring the Sterling Corporation a contract worth at least $100 million, but also solidify its position on the global stage. The atmosphere at the office and at home was intensely professional. I understood the importance of this negotiation. If it failed, Alexander's reputation would be severely damaged. On the day of the final negotiation, he sat in the main conference room, preparing for the video call with the partners. The entire core project team was present, the atmosphere so serious you could hear a pin drop. 20 minutes before the meeting was scheduled to begin, Alexander's personal phone, lying on the table, vibrated softly. The screen lit up with 2 words. Asterisk Emily Davis asterisk. He glanced at it, his brows furrowing slightly. Without hesitation, he reached out and rejected the call, keeping his promise to me. But immediately after, the screen lit up with a new text message. Curiosity got the better of him and he opened it. That message became the spark that ignited a new inferno. I later got the content of the message from Mr. Thompson, who was also in the room. Emily had written, asterisk, Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry to bother you at such a critical moment. I just wanted to personally thank you and say goodbye. Perhaps our fate was only meant to go this far. Thank you for your trust and guidance over the past year. Meeting you was the greatest fortune of my life. If there is a next life, I will surely repay this kindness. Asterisk. Every word was perfectly crafted, tragic, resolute, yet hinting at unrequited devotion. A perfect performance. Mr. Thompson recounted that after reading the text, Alexander's face went deathly pale. The hand holding the phone began to tremble. He frantically called Emily back, but no one answered. Panic was written all over his face. The memory of Lillian Reed's death seemed to flood back, overwhelming all his reason. He abruptly shot to his feet, startling everyone in the room. Track her location now, he roared at another assistant. Then he turned to the stunned management team and threw out a single sentence that left them all speechless. Postpone today's negotiation. Without waiting for a response, without a thought for the $100 million contract or the reputation of the entire corporation resting on his shoulders, Alexander Sterling bolted from the conference room like a madman. He drove like a maniac to Emily's rundown apartment building and kicked down the door. The scene inside was exactly what Emily had perfectly staged for him. She lay unconscious in the bathtub. The water tinged a faint red. There was a cut on her left wrist, not deep enough to be life-threatening but enough to create a horrifying visual effect. Her face was pale, her long lashes still, her breathing shallow, a tragedy calculated down to last detail. Seeing this, Alexander completely lost his mind. He screamed her name, scooped her up, and raced to the hospital. On the way, Emily's body grew colder in his arms, a sensation chillingly similar to the day he held Lillian Reed's lifeless form. Guilt, regret, and the fear of loss once again consumed him entirely. In that moment, his promise to me, our marriage, all of it was forgotten. His world now had only one purpose. He had to save this shadow. I didn't know that Alexander had stormed out of the office and rushed to the hospital. At that moment, I was also at a hospital, but for a completely different reason. For the past few days I hadn't been feeling well. I was nauseous in the mornings and constantly exhausted. At first, I attributed it to the stress from the constant conflicts with Alexander. But when my period was a week late, a tiny, fragile thought began to form in my mind, a thought that I both feared and secretly hoped for. I decided to go to a private hospital on the Upper East Side for a checkup, a place known for its discretion and excellent service. I didn't tell anyone, not even Chloe. I wanted to face the results, whatever they were, by myself. The hospital was clean and quiet. I sat in the waiting area, my palms sweating. I was anxious, but deep down a flicker of hope refused to be extinguished. Alexander and I had been married for 3 years. Though it started as a business arrangement, we had shared days of genuine love. If there really was a baby, could it be the bond that mended the fractures between us? Could the arrival of a tiny new life make Alexander mature, pull him away from the ghosts of his past, and bring him back to his real family? While I was lost in thought, the clinic door opened and a nurse called my name with a smile. The doctor was a kind, gentle, middle-aged woman. She asked me detailed questions about my symptoms and then ordered some blood tests and an ultrasound. The wait for the results felt longer than a century. I sat on a bench in the hallway, my hands clasped tightly, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. Miss Katherine Pierce, the doctor is ready to see you. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and walked in. The doctor looked at me, a warm smile on her face. She pushed a paper toward me. Congratulations, Miss Pierce. You're 6 weeks pregnant. The fetus is developing well and we already have a heartbeat. My ears started ringing. All the sounds around me faded away, leaving only the doctor's words echoing in my head. Asterisk pregnant. I was pregnant. Asterisk. An overwhelming, pure and intense happiness surged through me, washing away all the anger, resentment, and fatigue of the past few weeks. My eyes stung and hot tears streamed down my cheeks. These were not tears of sorrow but tears of boundless joy. My hand trembled as I gently touched my still flat stomach. Here, a tiny life, the crystallization of my love with Alexander, was growing day by day. Our child. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much, I managed to say, my voice choked with emotion. Holding the test results and the tiny ultrasound picture, I felt like I was holding the entire world. Nothing else mattered anymore. Who was Emily Davis? Who was Lillian Reed? They would all become part of the past. Alexander was going to be a father. He would be so happy. He would change. We would rebuild our family together for our child. A bright, warm future seemed to be unfolding before me. I walked out of the clinic, my heart overflowing with elation. I had to tell him right away. I wanted to see the look on his face, to share this happiness with him. I was walking down the hallway, pulling out my phone to call him, when I looked up and saw a painfully familiar figure stepping out of an elevator ahead. It was him, Alexander. What was he doing here? My heart skipped a beat. Perhaps this was fate, a sign from the heavens that I was meant to share the good news with him in person. Without a second thought, the brightest smile I had worn in months bloomed on my face. I clutched the ultrasound photo tightly and quickened my pace towards him, ready to share the miracle that would save our marriage. Alex, I called out, my voice clear and filled with joy. I walked quickly towards him, my heart dancing, imagining his look of surprise turning into overwhelming happiness. He turned around, but the face that greeted me was not the smile I expected. It was a terrifyingly unfamiliar face, pale with rage, eyes bloodshot and blazing, looking at me with a gaze of pure hatred and disgust. He looked like a demon fresh from hell, radiating a chilling, murderous aura. The smile on my lips froze, my joyful steps faltered. What was happening? Before I could process it, before I could utter a single question, he was in front of me. A dark shadow flashed, and a sharp, brutal crack times echoed through the sterile, quiet hallway of the hospital. My head snapped to the side, a searing, white-hot pain erupting on my left cheek. The world tilted and then went dark. I stumbled backward, losing my balance, and collapsed onto the cold tile floor. The ultrasound picture and test results flew from my hand, scattering across the white tiles. My head was spinning, a relentless ringing in my ears. I was in complete shock, unable to believe what had just happened. Alexander Sterling, my husband of 3 years, the man who had never even raised his voice at me, had just struck me. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony that was tearing my heart to shreds. The happiness and hope that had bloomed just minutes ago were now crushed into dust by that one cruel slap. I dazedly looked up at him, my eyes filled with nothing but confusion and excruciating pain. Asterisk. Why? Asterisk. He stood over me, looking down with an expression of utter contempt and disgust, as if I were the filthiest trash. His voice hissed through his clenched teeth, every word a dagger to my heart. Katherine Pierce, how could you be so vicious? He roared, heedless of the shocked stares of a few passers-by. I did what you asked, I kept my distance from Emily. And still, you wouldn't let her go, you had to push her to this point. I was still dazed, completely clueless as to what he was talking about. Asterisk, push, Emily? Asterisk, she's in the emergency room right now, fighting for her life. He pointed down the hall. And you have the nerve to show up here looking so happy. Did you come to see if she was dead yet? His words were like a bucket of ice water dumped over my head. I began to dimly understand. Emily had attempted suicide and he believed it was all my fault. I wanted to explain. I wanted to tell him I had done nothing. I wanted to show him the ultrasound picture on the floor, to tell him I was carrying his child. But he gave me no chance. He glared at me with venomous eyes and spat out his final words, words that sealed the door to my heart forever. How could I have married a she-devil like you, vicious, disgusting. With that, he didn't even glance at the papers scattered around me. He shot me one last hate-filled look, then turned and strode away, his back rigid and merciless. I was left alone on the cold floor.
One cheek burning, my heart shattered into a million pieces. My trembling hand reached out and picked up the crumpled ultrasound picture. The faint, black and white image of a tiny life, the miracle that was supposed to save us, had appeared in the middle of this living hell, completely ignored by its father. Hot, bitter, and desperate tears finally began to fall. The sound of Alexander's footsteps faded, and then disappeared down the hall. A suffocating silence fell over me again. I remained on the cold floor, one cheek numb and burning. The ringing in my ears persisted, but the world around me seemed to have quieted. Everything moved in a strange, slow motion. I wasn't crying anymore. Perhaps the shock was too great, drying up my tears. With difficulty I pushed myself up, every bone in my body aching. I staggered over to a polished metal sign and looked at my reflection. A strange woman stared back, hair slightly disheveled, eyes vacant and hollow, and on one pale cheek, the angry red and swollen imprint of 5 fingers. I raised a hand to gently touch the wound. A sharp pain shot through me, a reminder that this wasn't a nightmare, it was real. A cruel, ugly reality. In my mind, Alexander's hateful words played on a loop. Asterisk. How could you be so vicious? You had to push her to this point. She's in the emergency room, fighting for her life. Asterisk. The scattered pieces of the puzzle began to form a complete, horrifying picture. Emily had attempted suicide, or rather, she had staged a suicide attempt. She had played her final, most venomous card, betting her own life. And she had won. Alexander believed her. He was utterly convinced that I was a heartless she-devil, who had used cruel tactics to drive his innocent, vulnerable secretary to the brink of death. In his eyes, all the blame now rested on me. I laughed. A dry, bitter laugh echoed in the empty hallway. How ridiculous! How utterly ridiculous! 3 years of marriage. Even if there wasn't a deep, passionate love, there was at least a sense of shared history, of partnership. I had always fulfilled my duties as a wife, supporting his career, respecting his parents. I had thought that if we just lived peacefully together, we would eventually find our happiness. But I was wrong. I had forgotten that his heart always held an indelible shadow. And when someone with a similar face appeared, all reason, all marital affection, became worthless. He was willing to believe an outsider, willing to strike his own wife, the wife carrying his child for a mere substitute. The little love I had left for him, the fragile hope that this child could save our marriage, all of it was pulverized into dust in the moment that slap landed. My hand instinctively went to my stomach. A fierce, protective feeling surged through me, stronger than ever before. This was no longer times our time's child. This was times my time's child. Mine alone. I would never let my child have a father so blind, so violent, so cruel. I would not let them grow up in a family filled with deceit and hypocrisy. The pain in my heart slowly crystallized, hardening into something cold, solid, and sharp. It was resolve. My tears had stopped. My eyes were no longer filled with confusion, only a terrifying clarity. I bent down and picked up the crumpled ultrasound picture from the floor, the image of a tiny black dot, proof of a miracle that had been mercilessly crushed. I stared at it for a long moment, memorizing my child's first form. Then, slowly and deliberately, I tore it into tiny pieces, impossible to ever put back together again. Just like my heart. Just like our marriage. The small white fragments fluttered from my fingers, landing on the ice-cold floor. I stood up, brushing invisible dust from my clothes. My back was straight, my steps steady as I walked away. I didn't look back. The Katherine Pierce of yesterday, the foolish wife, who had always hoped for Alexander Sterling's love, was dead. She had died in this hospital hallway, at the hands of the man she once called her husband. I hailed a taxi and went straight back to the penthouse Alexander and I had once called home. Staring out the window at the bustling New York traffic, my mind was strangely empty and calm. There was no more pain, no more rage, only a chilling certainty about what I had to do next. The grand building came into view, as magnificent as ever. But to me now, it was nothing more than a gilded cage, beautiful but imprisoning. This was no longer a home, it was an empty shell filled with false memories and pain. I paid the driver, pulled the suitcase I had hastily bought at a store near the hospital, and walked inside. The silence was eerie. I didn't call for the staff, just walked silently up to the master bedroom on the second floor, the very room where, just hours ago, I had been happily dreaming of a future filled with a child's laughter. Just as I opened the closet, my phone vibrated. It was Mr. Thompson. His voice on the other end was urgent and worried. "Miss Pierce, are you all right, Mr. Sterling? He just issued a series of termination orders." "I'm listening," I said, my voice flat and emotionless. "Everyone in the company who ever had a conflict with Secretary Davis, from the cafeteria cook to several department heads, has been fired immediately under the pretext of corporate restructuring. Almost no one was spared, Mr. Thompson's voice trembled slightly. "Even me. He just had someone inform me that I abused my authority to suppress an employee and has appointed a new assistant to replace me. Miss Pierce, he's completely lost his mind. He's cutting off all your support within the company." I let out a cold laugh. "Lost his mind? No. He's more clear-headed than ever. This is his declaration of war. It wasn't just a slap, not just insults. He was using his actions to prove his choice. He was uprooting my people, erasing every trace of me from the Sterling Corporation, all to appease a conniving woman who had just finished her performance and to assert his absolute power. He had made his choice, loud and clear." "I understand," I said, and hung up. The last shred of hesitation, if there ever was any, had just been torn to pieces by Alexander himself. I opened the empty suitcase and began to pack, mechanically and efficiently. I only took what was truly mine. My clothes, some jewelry from my mother, and important personal documents. I didn't touch a single thing of his. The designer bags, the expensive watches he had given me, I left them all. They were tainted by his deceit. I didn't need them anymore. My gaze fell upon the baby crib we had looked at online together just a few weeks ago. A pang of pain shot through my heart, but I quickly suppressed it. After packing, I dragged the heavy suitcase downstairs. The clatter of the wheels on the marble floor echoed through the empty house. It sounded like a lament. I didn't call the Pierce family driver. I hailed another taxi myself. I wanted to sever everything as cleanly as possible. Standing at the grand entrance waiting for the car, I instinctively placed a hand on my stomach. "My baby," I whispered, my voice lost in the night wind. "I'm sorry I couldn't give you a complete family, but I promise you, from now on, we will start a new life together. A life free of lies and betrayal. I will give you the very best of everything in this world." A yellow taxi pulled up. I opened the door, got in, and never once looked back. The car rolled away, carrying me from that hell. The image of the magnificent penthouse grew smaller in the rearview mirror, until it vanished completely. My destination was my parents' home. The only place in the world I knew I would always be safe and cherished. Alexander Sterling, the real war has just begun, and this time, I will not be fighting alone. The taxi stopped before the imposing iron gates of the Pierce family estate. It was nearly midnight, and the entire affluent neighborhood was shrouded in silence, lit only by the soft glow of streetlights. I paid the fare and pulled the suitcase out myself, a wave of cold night air washing over me, bringing with it a vague sense of security. This was home, the only place I could return to, when the whole world had turned its back on me. The security guard at the gate was surprised to see me arrive at this hour in a taxi with a single suitcase, but he recognized me immediately and hurried to open the gates, bowing respectfully. I said nothing, just gave a slight nod and pulled my suitcase along the gravel path toward the main villa. Lights were still on in the large windows, indicating my parents were still awake. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the storm of emotions inside me, and composed myself before pushing the door open. In the living room, my mother was reading on the sofa while my father watched the late-night financial news. Hearing the door, they both turned. Surprise flickered across their faces, quickly replaced by deep concern. "Katherine," my mother put her book down and rushed toward me. "Why are you home so late? And what's with the suitcase? Did something happen, darling?" My father said nothing, but he had turned off the television. His sharp eyes scanned me from head to toe, as if trying to see into my very soul. I managed a tired smile, avoiding my mother's gaze. "Mom, Dad, it's nothing serious," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Alex and I just had a little argument. I wanted to come home for a few days to clear my head." My mother looked at me with suspicion but didn't press further. She took my coat. "It's good you're home, you should have called. I'll have Mrs. Gable prepare your room and make you some hot soup. Look at you, you've gotten so thin." She was always like this, worrying about the smallest things. But her concern only made me feel more cornered. As I turned to take off my shoes, the light from the chandelier fully illuminated the still swollen red mark on my cheek. The layer of foundation I had hastily applied at the hospital couldn't completely hide the trace of that brutal slap. My mother's hand, which had been smoothing my hair, suddenly froze. Her voice dropped, sharp with worry. "Katherine, your face, what happened to your face?" She gently reached out to touch my cheek. I flinched back instinctively, avoiding her touch. "It's nothing, Mom. I wasn't careful and bumped into a door earlier." My lie sounded pathetic even to my own ears. My reflex to pull back had accidentally exposed my wrist, where a faint purple bruise from my fall at the hospital was visible under the light. My mother's eyes locked onto it instantly. And your wrist, did you bump that into a door too? Her voice was no longer just worried, it was laced with a stern, heartbroken tone. All this time, my father had remained silent on the sofa. He hadn't said a word, but his expression grew darker by the second. His silence was more terrifying than any shouting. He was observing, analyzing. He knew this was far more than a simple marital spat. I felt trapped. I couldn't tell them the truth right now. I was too tired, too hurt, and I didn't want to worry them further, especially when I hadn't even figured out how to tell them about the baby. I'm so tired. I used it as an excuse to escape. I'm going to my room to rest. We can talk tomorrow. With that, I quickly pulled my suitcase and headed for the stairs, not daring to look back at them. I shut my bedroom door and locked it. This was my childhood room. Everything was just as I had left it. The familiar scent of sandalwood and jasmine gave me a fragile sense of security. I dropped the suitcase and collapsed onto the bed, my body feeling utterly drained. The strong, resilient facade I had put on finally crumbled. I knew my parents, they would never let this go, especially my father. His silence was a promise of a silent investigation. The storm I had brought home with me was about to erupt, and it would surely be larger and fiercer than anything Alexander Sterling could ever imagine. A single hot tear finally escaped and rolled down my still aching cheek. I spent a sleepless night, images of the slap, the hateful words, and Alexander's merciless back replaying endlessly in my mind. The next morning, I came downstairs with dark circles under my eyes. Breakfast was a tense, heavy affair. My mother tried to act normal, constantly putting food on my plate, but I could see her eyes were red and swollen. My father had been in his study since early morning. I could hear him on the phone, his voice low and curt. Just as I put down my fork, my father walked out of his study. His face was unnervingly calm, but I knew it was the calm before the storm. He placed a thin file on the table in front of me. Bumped into a door, did you? His voice was deep, each word like a sharp, cold piece of ice. I looked down, silent. I knew I couldn't hide it anymore. My trembling hand opened the file. Inside were clear color-printed photographs. The first was a portrait of Emily Davis. The second was a photo of her in the janitor's uniform at the gala. The third was a still from the hospital's security camera, capturing the moment Alexander raised his hand. Next was a copy of Emily's hospital admission form, with the diagnosis of suicide attempt. And finally, a brief report confirming that I had visited the obstetrics and gynecology department on that same day. My father knew everything. In a single night he had uncovered the entire truth. My mother glanced at the photos, let out a short gasp, and covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. Her shock quickly turned to fury. My father could no longer maintain his composure. He slammed his hand on the table, the impact making the expensive china rattle. "That bastard!" he roared, his voice no longer calm but filled with the rage of a lion whose den had been invaded. "The Sterling family dares to treat my daughter this way. He dared to hit you. He dared to hit my daughter while she was pregnant. Oh my baby!" My mother burst into tears and ran to hug me tightly. "Why are you suffering so much? Why did you hide this from us? That monster, that tramp, I will never forgive them." Just as our family was engulfed in this emotional storm, my phone vibrated. It was a news alert from a major New York entertainment site. I opened it instinctively. The headline screamed at me. Sterling Court CEO and Mystery Secretary's public affair. Did the other woman succeed in toppling the billion-dollar marriage to Pierce Harris? The article was accompanied by a series of photos of Alexander and Emily. There were pictures from the gala, from other events, and the most recent one, taken just this morning. As Emily was discharged from the hospital, Alexander was seen carefully helping her into a car, his expression gentle, while she nestled against him looking weak and pitiful, a perfect performance for the public. I showed the phone to my father. The image of Alexander tenderly caring for Emily, in cruel contrast to his violent actions towards me at the hospital, extinguished the last flicker of hope or illusion I might have harbored. My pain now transformed into a cold, vengeful fire. "Dad," I looked up, meeting his eyes, my voice unusually firm. "I want a divorce. And I want the Sterling family to pay a very, very heavy price." My father looked at the article, then back at me. The rage on his face slowly subsided, replaced by a steely resolve. He picked up his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Hello, Mr. Miller. It's Marcus Pierce. As of this moment, halt all ongoing projects with the Sterling Corporation, immediately." He paused for a second. "Yes, breach of contract. The Pierce Group will absorb all losses. Just do it." He hung up and made another call. "John, I need you to contact our allied investment funds." "That's right, dump all shares of Sterling Corp held by us and our associates, sell them all. I don't care about the price." My mother was still holding me, sobbing, while my father stood by the window, his back straight, making one call after another calls that could determine the life or death of an entire corporation. The atmosphere in the Pierce home was heavy, yet it simmered with the promise of retribution. Alexander Sterling probably still thought he was just dealing with a petty wife. He was about to find out he had foolishly declared war on an entire dynasty. The first reports of Sterling Corp stocks suddenly plummeting began to appear on financial news tickers. The storm had truly arrived. In the days after I returned to the Pierce estate, a frightening calm settled over the family, but I knew that beneath the silence, a tsunami was forming. My mother asked no more questions, simply dedicating herself to taking care of me. The most nutritious meals, the best prenatal supplements, she prepared everything herself. Her heartache had transformed into an almost absolute protectiveness. She wanted to compensate me and the baby in my womb for all the pain I had endured. My father spent most of his time in his study. He was no longer explosively angry, but had adopted the cold, decisive demeanor of a general commanding his troops. His battlefield was the New York Stock Exchange. I didn't leave my room. I lay in bed, the large television tuned to the financial news channel. I wanted to witness the downfall of those who had hurt me with my own eyes. Day 1. Following my father's orders, the moment the market opened, Sterling Corporation's stock nosedived. A deadly sea of red washed over the trading boards. By noon, their stock had hit its limit down, wiping out billions in market capitalization. The financial analysts on TV were baffled, speculating about a coordinated sell-off by major investment funds, but unable to pinpoint a specific reason. Day 2. The Sterling family's nightmare continued. The Pierce Group, their most crucial strategic partner and strongest backer, suddenly issued an official statement. Asterisk. "We are terminating all joint projects with the Sterling Corporation, citing irreconcilable differences in business philosophy." Asterisk. This was a fatal blow. The Pierce Group's announcement was like a starting pistol. Smaller, hesitant partners immediately sensed the danger. Fearing they would be caught in the crossfire, they scrambled to cancel contracts and pull out of joint ventures. Sterling Corp's stock remained frozen at its lowest limit for a second consecutive day. And where was Alexander Sterling while his family's empire was crumbling? What was he doing? I scrolled through my phone. The paparazzi photos were everywhere. Yesterday, he was seen taking Emily to a lavish French restaurant. This morning, she was photographed leaving his luxury apartment with a satisfied smile. He was either too foolish to realize the severity of the crisis, or so drunk on love that he no longer cared about anything else. Since that day at the hospital, he hadn't made a single call, send a single text. It was as if I, and the child in my womb, had vanished from his world. I looked at the photos with a heart devoid of ripples. No jealousy, no anger, only infinite contempt. Day 3 The crisis at Sterling Court reached its peak. Their stock was practically worthless paper. Banks began calling in their loans, and rumors of impending bankruptcy spread like wildfire across every major news outlet. The name Sterling, once a symbol of a rising power in New York, had become a joke, a synonym for disaster. I put down my tablet and gently caressed my stomach. Asterisk. See, little one, this is the price of betrayal. Asterisk. My father's revenge was just the beginning. My own would come later. And it would be far more ruthless. Just then, Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper who had cared for me since I was a child, knocked on the door, her expression hesitant. Miss Katherine, she said softly. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling are downstairs. They wish to see you. I smirked. So, they had finally come. The big fish could no longer sit still in their rapidly drying pond. I wasn't surprised. I knew it was only a matter of time. I calmly walked to my closet and chose a simple but elegant A-line dress, loose enough to hide my still flat stomach. I sat at my vanity, applied a touch of concealer to hide my fatigue, and a light coat of lipstick. I wanted to face them in my most composed state. I was no longer Katherine Pierce, their ever-obedient daughter-in-law. I was Katherine Pierce, heiress to the Pierce dynasty. When I walked down to the living room, the scene was just as I had expected. My former parents-in-law sat stiffly on the sofa. In just a few short days, they seemed to have aged a decade. My former mother-in-law, Mrs. Sterling, had red, swollen eyes and a haggard face. My former father-in-law, Mr. Sterling, had red, swollen eyes. Sterling, a man who always carried himself with an air of arrogance, now had a face deeply etched with anxiety and helplessness. My parents had tactfully made themselves scarce. My father wanted me to confront them alone, to make it clear who held all the power in this game. Seeing me, Mrs. Sterling shot up and rushed to grab my hand. Her hand was cold and trembling. Katherine, my dear, she choked out. Can you please speak to your father, save the Sterling family? Whatever the problem is, a husband and wife can talk it out. Why has it come to this? My former father-in-law also stood up, his voice pleading but still trying to retain a shred of dignity. That's right, Katherine, we are all one family after all. What you're doing is no different from destroying the business. That will one day belong to you and Alexander. Asterisk. One family. Asterisk. I gently but firmly pulled my hand away. I didn't sit down. I stood before them, creating an impassable distance. Mr. Sterling. Mrs. Sterling. I believe you are mistaken, I said, my voice calm but cutting like a knife. Alexander and I are about to be strangers. My use of Mr. and Mrs. Sterling successfully stunned them both. My former mother-in-law looked at me in disbelief. What are you saying, Mr. and Mrs.? She stammered. Are you so angry you won't even call us mom and dad anymore? Did that boy Alexander upset you again? Tell us when he gets here. We'll break his legs and make him kneel to apologize to you. They still thought this was just a common marital tiff. They still thought a simple apology could fix everything. I looked them straight in the eye, the last ounce of pity I had for them vanishing. Upset me, I let out a soft cold laugh. Ma'am, your precious son didn't just upset me. He humiliated me. He betrayed me. And I paused, letting my next words land with their full devastating weight. He hit me. Both of their faces froze. I gave them no time to process it, continuing in a flat emotionless tone, as if narrating someone else's story. I told them everything. The villa. The dress at the gala. Emily's staged suicide. Alexander firing all of my people. And finally, the crushing slap he gave me in the hospital hallway. I told them everything, except for one crucial detail, the baby in my womb. That was my final trump card, to be played only at the most decisive moment. With every word I spoke, their faces grew paler. When I got to the part about the slap, my former mother-in-law had to grab the arm of the chair to keep from collapsing. My former father-in-law, a man proud his entire life, seemed to shrink, his shoulders slumping in utter defeat. They were speechless. They had come to beg for their family's business, only to be confronted with the truth of their own son's moral bankruptcy. This, my former father-in-law stammered, unable to form a complete sentence. How could this be? I looked at their devastated faces without a shred of sympathy. It is what it is. You should go home and ask your good son yourselves. With that, I didn't waste another second. I turned and walked straight back upstairs, leaving them standing lost and alone in the grand living room, drowning in the harsh truth and their own crushing despair. After my former parents-in-law left, the atmosphere in the Pierce house remained incredibly heavy. I knew this was just the quiet before an even bigger storm. From my room, I could hear my father pacing in his study downstairs, punctuated by a series of terse, aggressive phone calls. My mother brought a bowl of hot soup up to my room. She sat by my bed, her eyes still red from a mixture of anger and pity. "Katherine," she took my hand. "Your father just called that monster. He demanded that he come here immediately to settle things." I nodded silently. "You just rest, darling. Let your father and me handle everything." My mother stroked my head lovingly. "The Pierce family can lose anything, but we will absolutely not let our daughter be bullied like this." I looked at my mother, a warmth spreading through my chest. This was family, an unshakable fortress that nothing could replace. "Mom, Dad, you two go downstairs first. I want to see what kind of act he's going to put on next." My mother nodded and quietly laughed. I stood on the second-floor balcony, looking down into the living room. My former parents-in-law hadn't left yet. They sat there, looking defeated and lifeless. My father sat in the high chair, his face like stone, not saying a word, but his sheer presence was enough to crush the sterling couple. About half an hour later, the familiar sound of a car engine came from the driveway. The grand front door was opened once more. Alexander walked in, his face edged with annoyance and impatience. "Mom, Dad, what's so urgent that you had to call me here? I'm busy taking care of Emily." His first words were not of concern or remorse, but a complaint about being disturbed while tending to his precious secretary. My former parents-in-law's faces immediately soured. But what stunned everyone in the room, including me, was the figure who followed him in, Emily Davis. She actually dared to come here. She wore a simple white dress, her long hair down, her face pale and made up to look weak and fragile. She clung to Alexander's side, one hand gripping his arm, her wide eyes looking around nervously, playing the part of a lost fawn in a lion's den. It was a perfect performance, but also an act of supreme foolishness. At a time like this, Alexander still dared to bring her to the Pierce estate, in front of both sets of parents. He wasn't just a violent traitor, he was an absolute fool. The air in the living room froze. My father's face turned black as thunder. My mother gasped, covering her mouth in disbelief. And my former father-in-law, the man who had been so dejected just moments before, was now consumed by rage. He looked at his son, then at the woman playing the victim beside him, and his whole body began to shake. "You insolent whelp," he roared and lunged at Alexander. You dare to bring this woman here, crack, a loud, sharp slap echoed through the living room. My former father-in-law had used all his strength to strike Alexander across the face. Alexander was completely stunned. This was likely the first time in his life his father had ever hit him, especially in front of everyone. His handsome face immediately swelled with a red mark. "Dad, what are you doing?" he yelled, clutching his cheek. "What am I doing?" His father raised his hand again. "I'm knocking some sense into you, crack, Another slap landed on the other cheek. "You completely disgraced the Sterling family name." Alexander staggered back, dazed by the two blows. He looked at his father with disbelief, then his hateful gaze shifted to me, standing on the stairs. In his eyes, everything he was suffering today was my fault. His father's rage was not yet spent. He raised his hand for a third slap, but just then Emily, who had been playing the part of a frail statue, suddenly let out a heart-wrenching cry. "Sir, please don't hit him anymore," she shrieked. She then rushed forward, spreading her arms to shield Alexander. Like a heroine protecting her beloved. It was a perfectly calculated move, meant to display her loyalty and make her look pitiful. My former father-in-law froze, looking at the woman before him with utter disgust. My former mother-in-law, who had been sobbing, could no longer bear the ridiculous spectacle. Her sorrow for her son turned into pure hatred. For the woman who had destroyed her family. "You bitch," she shrieked, her voice distorted with rage. "You still dare to act at a time like this." She lunged forward, intending to grab Emily's hair and teach her a lesson. And this was the decisive moment, the moment that shattered every last illusion. Instead of pushing Emily aside to face his parents, Alexander did the unthinkable. He wrapped his arms around Emily, pulling her behind him, using his own body to shield her from his mother's wrath. "Mom, that's enough," he yelled at his own mother. "She's not at fault." Seeing this, I couldn't watch anymore. I let out a soft laugh, a laugh that was cold and full of mockery. In the tense silence of the room my laughter was jarring. I began to clap slowly. Clap. Clap. Bravo. Truly bravo, I said, descending the stairs. What a pair of star-crossed lovers, facing adversity together. It's so touching it could bring a tear to one's eye. All eyes in the room turned to me. My tongue was clearly the last straw for Alexander. He lost what little reason he had left. He spun around to face me, his eyes blazing red. "Katherine Pierce," he roared, his voice filled with venom. "Shut your mouth, you are a vicious woman, don't you dare stand there and slander the pure relationship between me and Emmy." "Emmy," I raised an eyebrow. Such an intimate name. "We are completely innocent." He tightened his grip on Emily, as if protecting a priceless treasure. "Everything I'm doing is just to make up for the harm you caused her." Hearing this, my father, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. His voice was calm, but carried an invisible weight that silenced the entire room. "Make up for harm?" He looked directly at Alexander. "In what way was my daughter out of line? Perhaps you could explain it to this old man." My father's cold and distant use of "you" was a clear declaration of severance. My former father-in-law, hearing his son's irredeemably foolish words, was boiling with rage. He swung his leg, intending to kick him. "You still dare to speak? I'll break your legs." But once again, Emily rushed out. This time, she didn't just shield him, she deliberately took the kick on her shin. "Ah!" she cried out in pain, and collapsed to the floor, clutching her leg, her face pale as tears streamed down her face. It was a chaotic, ridiculous, and laughable scene. My husband protecting his mistress in front of our families, his mistress collapsing to the floor in a dramatic faint, and my in-laws screaming in helpless fury. I looked at the scene before me, feeling nothing but exhaustion and disgust. "That's enough." My cold voice cut through the chaos. Everyone stopped and turned to look at me. I turned to the butler, who had been standing in a corner the whole time. "Mr. Bates, would you please go to my study and bring down the blue folder on my desk?" Everyone stared at me, wondering what I was planning. This farce had gone on long enough. It was time for the final curtain. My words brought a temporary halt to the chaos in the living room. Everyone stopped, their eyes fixed on me, trying to guess my next move. Alexander was still shielding Emily. My former in-laws looked at me with a complex mix of faint hope that I might salvage the situation in fear of my unnerving composure. Mr. Bates didn't ask any questions. He simply bowed respectfully and quickly went upstairs. Moments later, he returned with a neat blue folder in his hands, which he presented to me. I took it, feeling the firm, cold texture of the cover. I walked slowly to the marble coffee table in the center of the room, where everyone could see clearly. The rustle of paper as I opened the folder was loud in the silent room. Inside were 2 meticulously prepared documents. I placed them on the table and pushed one towards Alexander. His face, still marked with the red imprint of his father's hand, looked at me with a mixture of rage and confusion. This is the divorce agreement. My voice was clear and steady, devoid of any emotion. I've already signed it. All it needs is your signature. The word divorce was a bombshell. Emily, who was still feigning injury on the floor, couldn't hide the flicker of triumph in her eyes. It was a fleeting moment, but I saw it clearly. She quickly bowed her head, her shoulders beginning to shake as she continued her act. My former in-laws were in complete shock. Divorce, my former mother-in-law shrieked, rushing towards me. Katherine, you can't do this. Don't be rash. We can talk about this. You can't just say divorce. Alexander was also stunned, as if he couldn't believe his ears. He pushed Emily's clinging hand away and strode towards me. Katherine, are you insane? He stared at the papers on the table. You can't divorce me. You absolutely cannot. I raised an eyebrow, looking at him with a mocking gaze. And why not? I shot back. You stand here, openly holding another woman, protecting her in front of our families, and then you tell me we can't get a divorce. Alexander, is your logic flawed? I already told you, he yelled, trying desperately to hold on. There's nothing but a professional, innocent relationship between me and Emmy. I was wrong. I was wrong for not explaining it clearly to you. I'll fire her immediately. I'll do anything you want. Just don't divorce me. Such late promises. How ludicrous. I no longer care what kind of relationship you two have. I cut him off coldly. I only know one thing. When forced to choose, you protected her, not me. That's more than enough. I looked directly into his eyes, which were slowly filling with panic. Do you remember what I told you before we got married? What's mine, even if I don't want it anymore, is not for others to touch. Once it's been tainted, I will discard it without hesitation. That applies to things, and it applies to people. I paused, my voice colder than ever. Alexander, I don't want you anymore. His face went pale, and he staggered as if he might fall. He looked at me with utter disbelief, as if he had just been handed a death sentence. He remained rooted to the spot, refusing to pick up the pen. Seeing the stalemate, my father, who had been observing with regal silence, finally spoke. He didn't look at Alexander, but addressed his father. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of a mountain. Mr. Sterling, MRS. Sterling, my daughter has made her decision. I will not interfere. Today, I am giving your son 2 options. 1. He signs this paper, and we end things amicably. Perhaps we can still face each other as business acquaintances in the future. He paused, his sharp gaze flicking towards Alexander. 2. If he refuses to sign, I'm afraid your Sterling Corporation might not survive to see the end of this week. My father's threat was the final thunderclap. The choice was no longer about a marriage, but about the survival of an entire dynasty. My former father-in-law looked at his disobedient son, his aged face contorting with anger, shame, and helplessness. He pointed a trembling finger at the divorce papers and ground out each word through clenched teeth. Sign it now. My former mother-in-law burst into sobs. Alexander looked from his father to me, his eyes filled with desperation. Under the immense pressure from all sides, his trembling hand finally reached out and picked up the pen. The room was deathly quiet, filled only with the sound of my former mother-in-law's sobs and the scratching of the pen on paper. Alexander's head was bowed, his hair hiding his expression, as he slowly and heavily wrote his name, as if signing his own death warrant. He signed both copies. Our 3-year marriage was officially over. He dropped the pen, it rolled across the table and stopped. He looked up at me with empty eyes. Emily, still on the floor, saw this. Despite her best efforts, a flash of joy and victory was visible in her eyes. She had succeeded, she had eliminated me, the biggest obstacle. The title of Mrs. Sterling was finally within her grasp. I caught that look and just smirked coldly. Congratulations, Miss Davis, you finally got what you wanted. My sarcastic comment acted like a stimulant, jolting my former in-laws from their stupor. All their anger, shame and helplessness now had a clear target. You bitch, my former mother-in-law screamed, launching herself at Emily like a wounded animal. This is all your fault, you destroyed my family, I'll kill you. She grabbed Emily's hair, pulling and tearing at it maniacally. Mr. Sterling and Alexander rushed to intervene, and the living room once again descended into chaos. My father frowned and signaled to the butler. Mr. Bates, please escort our guests out. But at that exact moment, Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray with a steaming ceramic bowl on it. She ignored the chaos, walking purposefully toward me. Miss Katherine, she said with concern, your prenatal support tonic is ready, please drink it while it's still warm. The 3 words prenatal support tonic, though spoken softly, had the impact of 1,000 bombs. The entire room fell silent, the struggle stopped, the crying and shouting ceased. Everyone froze, staring at the bowl in Mrs. Gable's hands and then at me. Alexander let go of Emily. He turned to look at me in utter disbelief, his voice trembling so badly he could barely speak. Katherine, what did she just say? Prenatal tonic? You're pregnant. My former in-laws stared at me, then at my still flat stomach. Their faces were ashen, filled with horror and disbelief. I calmly took the bowl from Mrs. Gable, the warmth seeped into my palms. I slowly brought it to my lips and took a sip. The bitter taste spread through my mouth, but it was nothing compared to the bitterness in my heart. After swallowing, I looked up, directly at the man who was now my ex-husband. That's right, I replied, my voice perfectly level. I'm pregnant, 6 weeks. I looked deep into his eyes, which were now filling with despair. On the day you slapped me at the hospital, I was going to share this news with you. But you didn't even give me a chance to say a single word. Alexander's world seemed to crumble before my eyes. His legs gave out, and he staggered, nearly collapsing. His face was drained of all color. No, it can't be, he mumbled like a man who had lost his soul. He had just signed the divorce papers. He had just given up his wife, who was carrying his first child. Hearing my confirmation about being hit, my father could no longer restrain himself. The rage of a father seeing his daughter hurt exploded. What? He hit you? He roared, striding like a tiger toward the still stunned Alexander. He threw a powerful punch straight into his jaw. You animal, you dare hit my daughter, especially when she's pregnant. The punch sent Alexander sprawling backward, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. But he didn't fight back. He just stared at me, his eyes filled with pain, regret, and a desperate plea. Katherine, he reached a hand towards me. Give me one more chance, just one. I looked at his outstretched hand, at his shattered face, and I laughed. A cold, merciless laugh. A chance? How many chances have I given you, Alexander? Did you ever once cherish any of them? My words were the final dagger to his heart. He completely broke down, collapsing to his knees on the floor. My father pointed to the door, his voice booming with authority. Butler, throw every single one of them out of my house. After my former in-laws were unceremoniously escorted out, the Pierce estate finally returned to its rightful tranquility. My parents never mentioned the incident again, focusing all their energy on caring for me and their soon-to-be-born grandchild. I, too, cut off all news about the Sterling family. I didn't want their drama to affect my mood or my baby's health. My world was now one of peace. Alexander Sterling's world, however, had completely fallen apart. A week after the divorce, Mr. Thompson, who despite being fired, remained loyal to my father, called to report on the situation. Miss Pierce, I think you should know a little about Mr. Sterling's condition, he said hesitantly. I didn't want to hear it, but curiosity won. Go on. After that day, the Sterling Corporation survived the crisis. I heard Mr. Pierce ordered a stop to the attacks after the papers were finalized, but the damage was irreversible. The company's value has shrunk by nearly 40%, and major partners have pulled out. Mr. Sterling Sr. has returned to manage things, but he can only barely keep it afloat. As for Mr. Sterling Jr., Mr. Thompson paused. He has completely disappeared. He doesn't go to the company, doesn't see anyone. The staff at his penthouse say he just locks himself in all day and does nothing but drink. The once luxurious home is now like a winery, littered with empty bottles. I listened in silence. A talented young CEO, once a rising star in New York's business world, now a broken alcoholic. The price of foolishness was indeed steep. And what about Emily Davis? I asked, the words slipping out. She's still there, Mr. Thompson replied. She seems unwilling to give up. She goes to the penthouse every day, trying to take care of him. I could picture it. Emily, with her dream of becoming the mistress of the Sterling house, now faced with a drunk broken man, she certainly wouldn't give up easily. She would try to play the part of a gentle, tolerant woman, staying by his side in his darkest hour, to win his gratitude and his heart. Just as I thought, Mr. Thompson continued. Emily cleans up the messes he makes, cooks him hangover soup. When he passes out from drinking, she patiently cleans him and changes his clothes. It's an admirable devotion. But that devotion was met with the cruelest reality. Every time he's drunk out of his mind, he'll look at Emily with a hazy gaze, reach out to touch her cheek, and whisper in a pained voice, Lillian, is that you? Have you come back? At first, Emily would patiently correct him. Alex, it's me, Emily, I'm not her. But it was as if he couldn't hear her. He would just repeat in his delirium. Lillian, don't leave this time, okay? Don't leave me alone again. Once, twice, 10 times. Emily's patience finally wore thin. Every time he said Lillian's name, it was a knife in her heart. All her sacrifices, all her efforts, were seen by him as nothing more than the shadow of another woman. She was, and would always be, a substitute. Late one evening, after cleaning up another of Alexander's drunken rampages, Emily brought a glass of warm water to his bedside. He had just woken from a long stupor, his eyes still foggy. He looked at her, and once again, he whispered that name. Lillian. It was the last straw. Asterisk. Crash. Asterisk. The glass in Emily's hand was thrown against the wall, shattering into 100 pieces, just like her patience. Alexander was startled awake, the shock clearing some of the haze. He stared blankly at Emily, the woman who had always been so gentle and meek before him, now with her face twisted in rage. The jarring sound of shattering glass sobered Alexander up a little more. He sat up in bed, looking at Emily with a dazed expression, not understanding what was happening. What are you doing? Emily looked at him, and then burst into laughter, a crazed, bitter, and pained laugh. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with her horrifying laughter. What am I doing? I've had enough. Alexander Sterling, I've had more than enough, she shrieked, her voice sharp and filled with resentment. Lillian, can't you see anyone else besides her? Do you have any idea how stupid you are? She pointed a finger at his face. You abandoned your wife and child for a dead woman, lost your entire career. Look at yourself now. Pathetic. You deserve it. Everything happening to you now is karma. Hearing his deceased love being insulted, Alexander's protective instincts flared up, even in his drunken state. He staggered to his feet, his bloodshot eyes turning dangerously sharp. Shut up, he roared. You have no right to insult her. His defense of Lillian at this moment was the final spark that completely incinerated Emily's sanity. She decided to destroy everything, including the fantasy world he lived in. Insult her, Emily sneered, a cruel smile on her face. You're still protecting that woman at a time like this. Alexander, you are the most pathetic man on this earth. Did you know, the white moonlight of your heart? Your pure and innocent first love. She never actually died. Those words were like a lightning strike. Alexander froze, his entire body rigid. What nonsense are you talking about? He stammered, unable to believe what he was hearing. Nonsense. Emily stepped closer, looking directly into his eyes, her voice filled with glee at his suffering. Let me tell you the truth. She didn't die of an illness back then. She took $50 million from your parents and staged her own death, so she could run off with her poor-ass dirt boyfriend. Did you know that? Alexander staggered backward, his head spinning. He shook his head violently. No. That's impossible. Lillian wasn't that kind of person. Not that kind of person, Emily laughed manically. Then, why do you think I know all the private details about the two of you? Why do you think I just suddenly appeared in your life? She was the one who found me. Lillian Reed herself found me, she screamed like a madwoman. She said you secretly propping up her boyfriend's pathetic little company wasn't enough. She wanted more. She saw that I looked a little like her, so she told me to approach you, to play the part of a pitiful substitute to get as much money and as many resources out of you as possible. The truth, a truth so raw and cruel it was unimaginable, was laid bare. The woman he had loved and mourned for years had not only deceived him, but had conspired with another woman to deceive him all over again. The pain for his lost love, the regret for hurting me, the sacrifice of his career, everything he had done, was built on a monumental lie, a carefully calculated scheme. He wasn't just a fool, he was a laughingstock. Alexander's body went limp. He collapsed to the floor, his eyes lifelessly staring into space. No, impossible. He kept muttering like a man who had lost his mind. Emily looked at his completely broken form, her own madness subsiding, replaced by contempt and disgust. Alexander, don't blame anyone else, you brought this all on yourself. You were the one who foolishly pushed away the woman who loved you most. With that, she didn't spare him another glance. She turned and walked out of the penthouse, leaving him alone in the wreckage of his own illusions. Alexander sat on the cold floor for a long time before his trembling hands slowly reached for his phone. He had to confirm it. He had to hear it from his own father. He dialed his father's number. The call connected quickly. Dad, his voice was hoarse, lifeless. The story about Lillian, is it true? The other end was silent. A long silence, more terrifying than any admission. It was the answer. Alexander Sterling's world hadn't just collapsed, it had been utterly annihilated. In the following days, I heard no more news from the Sterling family, nor did I want to. I spent my time resting, nurturing my pregnancy, and beginning to involve myself in some of the Pierce Group's smaller projects. I needed to prepare for my and my child's future. The world outside the Pierce estate gates no longer seemed to concern me. Until a week later, when Mr. Thompson called me, his voice filled with unconcealed surprise. "Miss Pierce, something very strange has happened," he said. "Mr. Sterling. He's back at the company." I was a little surprised. I thought he would remain mired in depression and alcohol for much longer. "How is he?" I asked. "That's the strange part, Mr. Thompson replied. "He's like a completely different person. The drunken haggard look is gone. He's much thinner, but his eyes are terrifying cold, sharp, and utterly devoid of emotion. He doesn't speak to anyone unless absolutely necessary. He just works like a machine, at an intensity that frightens everyone." From his description, I could picture a completely changed Alexander Sterling. The extreme pain and humiliation hadn't broken him, they had forged him into a different kind of monster, one fueled by hatred. And that monster, upon its return, had immediately begun its hunt. Just as Mr. Thompson described, Alexander immediately called an emergency board meeting. He didn't address the Sterling Corporation's crisis. Instead, he presented a detailed report on all the group's investments and partnerships over the past few years. His target was quickly identified, a small tech company called Innovatech. When I heard the name, I instantly understood. The company's founder was named Ryan Peters, and he was the boyfriend Lillian Reed had left Alexander for. For years, out of obsession and guilt over his deceased love, Alexander had been secretly using Sterling Corp's subsidiaries and investment funds to inject capital, create contracts, and support Innovatech, turning it from an unknown startup into a rising star in the tech world. He had built that house. And now, he was going to burn it to the ground himself. He used his deep understanding of Innovatech's weaknesses, financial loopholes, and inflated numbers to strike with ruthless precision. First, he announced that the Sterling Group would withdraw all its investments and call in its loans ahead of schedule. Next, he unilaterally terminated all partnership contracts, citing minor breaches he had previously ignored. And the final, most venomous blow, he anonymously leaked a trove of internal documents to the media and regulatory bodies, exposing Innovatech's financial fraud and a pattern of deceiving investors with fabricated data. The result came faster than a hurricane. Innovatech, a castle built on sand, crumbled in a matter of days. Its stock became worthless paper, investors fled, and authorities launched an investigation. I sat in my study, reading the news on my tablet with a cold indifference. This was his private revenge, aimed at the women who had made a fool of him. It had nothing to do with me. His path was one of destruction. My path was forward, towards my future with my child. A few days later, Mr. Thompson sent me one last message on the matter. Asterisk Miss Pierce, Innovatech has officially filed for bankruptcy. The police have also been to their headquarters. I hear it was to arrest Ryan Peters on charges of large-scale financial fraud. Asterisk. The news of Innovatech's collapse was a sensation for a few days, then it faded, replaced by other scandals. For me, life went on peacefully. I started attending prenatal classes, went shopping for baby things with my mother, and occasionally visited the company to familiarize myself with the work my father intended to hand over. I had almost forgotten about the existence of Emily Davis and Lillian Reed. But the wheels of justice grind slowly but surely. The seeds of discord they had sown finally came to harvest. I wasn't there, but through fragmented news reports and police accounts, I pieced together their final tragedy. When Ryan Peters was arrested and the company went bankrupt, Lillian Reed's source of income was cut off. The life of luxury she had built on deceit vanished. In a fit of desperate rage, she blamed everything on Emily, believing that if Emily hadn't been so foolish and hasty, causing Alexander to discover everything, their plan would have never been exposed. They could have milked that sterling cow for a few more years. Using an unregistered number, Lillian sent Emily a text. Asterisk. You ruined everything, you idiot. Asterisk. Emily, who had been living in fear since leaving Alexander's penthouse, quickly replied. Asterisk. It wasn't my fault. He found out on his own. You have to believe me. Asterisk. Believe you. Asterisk. Lillian's reply was venomous. Asterisk. I'm broke, and Ryan's in jail, all thanks to you. 晚上11点 tonight. The alley behind Queen's Bar in the village. Be there. We're settling this. Asterisk. Emily was terrified. Asterisk. I'm not coming. There's nothing left to say. Asterisk. If you don't come, I'll find you. I'll tell the whole world what you did. Let's see if you can ever show your face again. Asterisk. Lillian's threat worked. Emily had no choice. That night, she went to the rendezvous point. It was a dark, grimy alley, lit only by the faint neon glow from the bar's sign. A light drizzle made the air feel even colder and more menacing. Emily trembled as she stepped into the alley. Lillian emerged from the shadows, her once angelic face now twisted with hatred and despair. Their argument quickly escalated. They blamed each other, cursed each other. Words turned to violence, and they attacked each other like two feral animals, a desperate, ugly struggle between two women with nothing left to lose. Apparently, Emily had brought a small fruit knife for protection. In her rage, Lillian managed to wrestle it from her. The exact details are unknown, but there was a blood-curdling scream, followed by an eerie silence. The next morning, as I was having breakfast with my mother, I scrolled through my phone and saw a small news brief on a local city news site. The headline was short and chilling. Asterisk bodies of two women found in a Greenwich Village alley, suspected homicide. Asterisk the article named the two victims. One was Emily Davis, the other was Lillian Reed. I stared at their names on the screen, feeling no sense of victory or joy, only a cold, empty void. The two women who had turned my life upside down, who had been the source of all my pain, had ended their lives at each other's hands. Karma, it seems, sometimes doesn't need a helping hand. I put my phone down and looked up at my mother. She was smiling, happily discussing potential names for her grandchild. My future was bright and clear. Theirs was forever buried in that dark, filthy alley. 4 years passed in the blink of an eye. The wounds of the past, though never completely gone, had been smoothed over by time and new happiness, their sharp edges dulled. My world now revolved around a little son who radiated warmth and brilliant light, my daughter, Amelia Mia Pierce. She was nearly 4 years old, an incredibly adorable and bright little girl. Mia had a round face and large, clear eyes, just like mine. But her high-bridged nose and thin lips were an undeniable copy of Alexander Sterling's. There was a time when seeing that resemblance would fill me with dread. But now, whenever I looked at her, my heart filled with nothing but infinite tenderness and love. She was mine, my most precious treasure. After my parents officially retired, they handed over the reins of the Pierce Group to me. I had transformed from a stay-at-home wife into a true businesswoman, busy, but independent and strong. My life was now complete. By day, I was the decisive CEO Pierce. By night, I was Mia's gentle mother. My parents' greatest joy now revolved around their little granddaughter. The Grand Pierce estate was always filled with the sound of her cheerful laughter. Mommy, Mommy, look, Mia, dressed in a pink princess dress, came running in from the garden, holding a freshly bloomed camellia. I learned a new word today, Mommy. This flower is vibrant. I laughed, scooping her up and kissing her chubby cheeks. My daughter is so smart. My mother came in from the garden, pruning shears in hand. She smiled kindly and took Mia from me. Grandma's Mia is the smartest of all. Now, say Grandma. Grandma, she chirped, her voice sweet as sugar. Watching them, my heart was filled with peace. This was the life I wanted. A life without deceit or betrayal, only pure, unconditional love. As for Alexander Sterling, after 4 years, he seemed to have a different life as well. I never actively sought out information, but through business connections, I heard things. The Sterling Corporation, after the devastating shock of that year, had gradually stabilized under his father's management. But it was no longer the formidable force it once was, merely a shadow of its former self. Alexander had returned to work. I heard he had become much more withdrawn and cold, and had never remarried. Over the past 4 years, he had tried countless times to contact me through lawyers, mutual friends, even by sending expensive gifts to my office. But I never responded, and I never accepted a single gift. The door to my heart was permanently closed to him. We had a clear legal agreement. He and his family were not to see Mia until she turned free. I wanted my daughter to have a truly peaceful childhood, undisturbed by the grievances of adults. Now, that time had passed. That evening, as I was reading Mia a bedtime story, my father knocked on the door, his expression thoughtful. "Katherine, I need to talk to you." I tucked my daughter in and quietly stepped out. "Dad, what is it, Mr. Sterling Sr.?" called again. My father said, "Mia's 4th birthday is coming up. They want to visit her. After all, they are her paternal grandparents." I was silent. I knew this day would come eventually. I couldn't selfishly deprive my daughter of her rights, nor could I stop grandparents from seeing their grandchild. It was the right thing to do. Seeing my hesitation, my father added, "If you don't want to, I'll refuse." I looked into the room where my daughter slept soundly, an angelic expression on her face. I shook my head slightly. "No need, Dad. I'm okay." I took a deep breath. "Please arrange a meeting for this weekend, here, at our house. I think it's time for things to be made clear." I had built a strong fortress around the peaceful world of my daughter and me for 4 years. Now, for the first time, I had to open the gates myself and let the ghosts of the past walk in. I didn't know how I would feel seeing him again, but I knew one thing for sure. The me of today was no longer afraid. That Sunday, the air in the Pierce estate was unusually formal and cool. My parents were both present, sitting in the living room like 2 guardian deities protecting us. I wore a simple dress, holding Mia's hand tightly. She seemed a little curious about everyone's seriousness, but sat quietly beside me. Right on time, the Sterling's car pulled up. Mr. Bates led them in. My former parents-in-law looked much older, their hair noticeably grayer, their faces deeply lined with sorrow. Following behind them was Alexander Sterling. He was thinner than before, the arrogant, charming air of his youth completely gone, replaced by a heavy, somber silence. When his eyes met mine, they were a complex storm of regret, pain, and a fragile flicker of hope. Mia was a smart and polite child. I had taught her about the existence of her paternal grandparents. Seeing the elderly couple, she bowed her head, her voice clear. "Hello, Grandpa." "Hello, Grandma." Those 2 titles seemed to completely break them. My former mother-in-law burst into tears, rushing forward to hug Mia tightly. "Oh, my granddaughter. My sweet granddaughter." My former father-in-law's eyes were also red. He looked at the granddaughter he had longed to see for 4 years, speechless. After a moment, Alexander slowly approached. He knelt on one knee to be at eye level with his daughter. His hand trembled as he reached out, wanting to touch her but not daring to. His voice was hoarse, choked with emotion. Mia, I'm your daddy. He looked at her, his eyes full of yearning and hope. Mia wasn't scared. She just tilted her head and looked straight at him with her big, clear eyes. A child's gaze is always the purest and most honest. She looked at him for a long moment, then said seriously, "No, sir, you're not." She called him sir, a polite but infinitely distant term. The room fell silent. The smile on Alexander's face froze. Mia continued, her voice still innocent, but every word was a knife. "Mommy said Daddy is the one who made her sad. People who make Mommy sad are bad people. Mia doesn't call bad people Daddy." The simple words of a 4-year-old child were more damning than any adult accusation. It was the rawest truth, seen through the clearest lens. Alexander's face completely fell. The hope in his eyes vanished, leaving only boundless pain and despair. "Daddy. Daddy knows he was wrong," he whispered, his voice nearly breaking. "Daddy is so sorry." Mia shook her head, her expression very serious. "Being sorry is useless. Mommy says some things, once they happen, there's no sorry medicine you can take to fix them." Alexander looked up at me, his eyes begging, pleading for forgiveness. I looked straight back at him. For the first time in 4 years, I felt no hatred, only a distant pity. I gave a slight shake of my head. It was over. It had been over for a very long time. He seemed to understand. He staggered to his feet like a man who had lost his soul. His parents rushed to support him, their faces also streaked with tears. They left, leaving the expensive gifts untouched on the table. After they were gone, Mia ran and hugged me. "Mommy, did I say the right thing?" I held my precious daughter tightly and kissed her forehead. "Yes, my darling, you said exactly the right thing." I looked out at the sun-drenched garden. Alexander Sterling would have to live with his regret for the rest of his life. He once had everything, and he had destroyed it with his own hands. That was his punishment. As for me, I had everything I needed, a stable career, loving parents, and most importantly, this precious daughter of mine. My life was more than complete. I didn't need any late apologies or anyone's regret. The future for my daughter and me was just beginning.